In the previous adventure, the Doctor was fortunate enough to get his dematerialization circuit back, meaning that this story is the Third Doctor's first opportunity to adventure with Jo in his TARDIS, allowing him to finally leave Earth without solving problems for the Time Lords. So, the duo attempt to leave Earth and find themselves on a ship. A really quite ordinary ship from the 1920s. Or do they? It's really quite interesting and fun the way that this episode teases you about what's actually going on. It gives you hints about what's happening. The Doctor is very stubborn and doesn't believe they are on Earth, but Jo is quite certain that they are.
Take a look at that.
1926.
Convinced?
No.
Oh, Doctor, you're so stubborn.
And simultaneously, we have some stuff happening on an alien planet. There are these workers, and there are some entertainers that have traveled to the planet to make a quick buck. So the story is paced very nicely. Honestly, this was a classic episode that genuinely made me appreciate the longer runtime. With about 100 minutes to tell the story, it doesn't feel rushed. It feels rather appropriately balanced. And as we go further into this one, we get a better idea of what's actually going on and how everything is connected, and I'll touch more on that aspect in the spoiler section. But the main reason that I enjoy this serial so much is just because it's fun. It really is. And a lot of this comes down to Jo and the Doctor and their dynamic together, but also the setting of the story which they find themselves in.
Who are these people? Well, don't you know, Andrews?
They said they joined the ship at port side.
Stowaways, eh?
Stowaways.
Where have you been hiding?
You tell him, Uncle.
And this episode is particularly interesting because there isn't necessarily a villain, not exactly. There are threats throughout the episode, but there isn't a particular villain fighting against some group or against the Doctor. The closest we get to those is the alien workers previously mentioned because they're kind of opposing the entertainers, but the dynamic is complicated and not as simple as that. The Third Doctor is as great as you would expect. He's the same as always, and for the most part, Jo is great too. She has a couple of parts where she screams unnecessarily, but it is forgivable given her brilliant chemistry with the Doctor, which, as always, the dynamic between the two of them is a great highlight.
Where are you going?
Well, to find out where we are, of course.
I thought you knew.
Yes, well, we may have slightly overshot the blue planet, but we must be on one of the planets in the group. We'll soon see.
So this is another Robert Holmes script, which is really cool to see because I'm finding that his Third Doctor scripts are actually really consistently solid, significantly better than his work for the Second Doctor. So now I am starting to see why he is considered one of the best classic writers for Doctor Who, because he actually has some really solid stories in here. Just the first ones he happened to do for the show in the Patrick Troughton era weren't actually that good, so if you're watching chronologically like I am, then you'll see those first and wonder, why this writer? Why is he the one that people seem to talk about the most? But once you get to these stories that are genuinely really enjoyable, it becomes clear, oh, this is why, because he can make some really good episodes of Doctor Who, or at least write them, and I definitely thought Carnival of Monsters was one of those. Because of how well this story kind of plays with you, I don't want to give away too many of its secrets and surprises if you have yet to see it, so now is the point where I will give you a spoiler warning. If you do not want any spoilers for this story, then skip to the time shown on screen, and if you've already seen it, then let's continue discussing Carnival of Monsters. So the story reveals pretty early on that the ship the Doctor and Jo have landed on is basically in a time loop, one which they are not affected by. Everybody keeps doing and saying the same things over and over again.
I suppose we're due for the monster bit any minute now.
These bright young things.
Yes, very probably.
You're different.
And the same events keep happening, and that was really fun and not overplayed. I like how they had a fun time with that aspect of the story, and it was quite well used. They didn't go too heavily into that to the point where you were watching things just continuously happening and it got monotonous and boring. No, they managed to use that aspect of the story just the right amount so you were invested in why these things were happening the way they were and why things were continuing while following our characters trying different things to get out of this situation.
By simply adjusting the hygrometer, the peaceful Tellurians can be made to behave in an amusingly violent way. Watch.
Right.
What are you doing, John?
Better thrash this fellow with an inch of his life.
What do you mean, not the real Harry?
And more fun still was when we got to explore other parts of the carnival, as the Doctor not only got to go to a different part of it entirely, but also within the interworkings of the device. And all of this was honestly so much fun. I just loved seeing them explore these different places together, and I really enjoyed the way that those two stories were intertwined and the points at which they chose to make certain events happen. Like I said, it's really well paced.
Furthermore, the creature may be hostile.
You kindly stop referring to me as the creature, sir. Or I may well become exceedingly hostile.
Silence! This tribunal is deliberating.
The tribunal is not deliberating. The tribunal is arguing.
And while I am discussing all of this within the spoiler section, although this story is loads of fun, it's also not terribly difficult to figure out what's going on. You can even within the first episode figure out that the connection between the two storylines is that the Doctor and Jo are within the carnival.
We appear to be in some kind of a machine.
Yes, and it's moving. I can feel it.
Yes, you're right.
And as obvious as that becomes, it is still a spoiler and it is still really well handled. Overall, I found this story to be an absolute blast, and I am surprised this one doesn't get more love. It's fun, engaging, well-paced, and balanced. The story plays with you in a way that is thoroughly entertaining, not to mention Jo and the Doctor are as good together as always. So what this story lacks in surprising you, it makes up for in being an absolutely delightful one to watch. I found Carnival of Monsters to be a really fun story that earns a solid rating of 8.25 out of 10. If you join me this coming Sunday, then I will be bringing you a review of Frontier in Space, an episode that I've already seen. So, what do you think about Carnival of Monsters? Do you agree with me? Is this story a bit underrated or perhaps appropriately rated? Be sure to let me know down below if you feel like doing so, and I hope to see you again next time for a review of Frontier in Space. But if not, that is absolutely fine, so long as you know that I appreciate your time here today. And with that said, thank you very much for watching, take care, and have a lovely week.